watching closely?
What's the secret, Max?
You just gotta find something you love to do and then do it for the rest of your life.
I don't want to be a product of my environment. I want my environment to be a product of me.
Hello and welcome to The Establishing Shot, a podcast where we do deep dives into directors and their filmographies, looking at what makes films special to a director and how each of their films have related themes and techniques. And yeah, it's going to be fun. We are in episode 3 of the podcast. And today we are on the second movie in our Wes Anderson series, Rushmore, his sophomore film. And so I have on the podcast with me today, Haydn Fabre. Haydn's one of my friends here in Lafayette, Louisiana. And Haydn, just share a little bit about yourself and what you do. Go ahead.
Yeah, man. Cool. Well, I'm a student pastor here in Lafayette. So I work with students a lot, and it's a ton of fun, man, just getting to introduce them to the movies that mean so much to me. My dad growing up, my dad was an FX dad. You know what that means? Like a TNT dad?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
We were like Gerard Butler on repeat, like all day long. It was action movie. That was it. And one day, man, I just decided like there's got to be something else other than just this. So I found the kind of middle ground between like the TNT FX type dad and like the critically acclaimed movie. And really, I think Gladiator was the movie that pulled me in. Gladiator was the first movie. Yeah. Man, I was just like, oh, you can do more with movies than, just entertaining someone while they like decompress from a day of work. Cause it like had that decompression of just like, watch the guys fight. But it was also just like, what an incredible story of, family and I can't even find the words, but like reputation restored. And it was so much deeper. So I began there into my deep dive into just cinema as a whole. I wrote myself a plan for like film school. So I went to film school on Google and not in person. But as far as Wes Anderson, my first Wes Anderson experience was probably the first movie that fully grabbed my heart and was like, you have a favorite movie now. Congratulations.
Yeah.
And as you know, Eli, that was Fantastic Mr. Fox.
Absolutely.
The movie that changed the game for me, that's been at the top of my favorites list for years now, that just like grabbed my heart and changed the way that I lived. And I think that's what movies are really meant to do, is to grab you, force you to see the world in a new way and challenge you to live with more things in mind than you may have had before.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really cool to hear just like your introduction to the film, just like from action movies to, hey, wait, here's an action movie, but there's something more going on here. And then Fantastic Mr. Fox. I mean, it's, for one, that's a very interesting like favorite movie, like. The thing like, what's your favorite movie? The thing people most of the time, people's either they have an answer or they have like one that they just say because they have to say something.
Yeah. You get the Godfathers, the Shawshank Redemptions,
Absolutely. Yeah. But Mr. Fox, I mean, that's a unique one. It's fun. When I was texting Haydn, about scheduling him to be on the podcast, I was like, we decided he was going to come on for Rushmore, but I was like, man, I've got to have you on for Mr. Fox too. So this won't be the last you hear from Haydn.
It's going to be a 5-hour-long episode. And I'm fired up for it.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, today we're getting into Rushmore. Obviously in episode 1, we really dove deep into Wes Anderson and just his techniques, his background, his the kind of thematic elements that you kind of see throughout his filmography. And me and Jacob talked for like way longer than I thought we would in that episode. And and here we are on episode 3. We talked about Bottle Rocket in episode 2, and Yeah, episode 3 of the podcast. It's exciting. My
Dude,
second
getting some
ever
traction.
host. So yeah, let's get things going. Let's talk about Rushmore. It's 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 interesting when we talked last week kind of about the Bottle Rocket's beginnings and how it's interesting to think about the transition directors have from like their first film, which was Bottle Rocket for Wes, to their second film. There's probably a lot of directors that make a first film and then never really get a chance to make another one. um you know we don't I don't know who they are because you
Yeah.
don't hear about them. They don't continue going. Maybe they would have been great, maybe not, but
You put all your
no.
eggs into this one project that you love, and maybe if it doesn't end up like you hope that it would, you just run out of that energy to keep writing and keep creating.
Right. And yeah, we talked about just how that was almost the case for Wes Anderson and Owen Wilson. Bottle Rocket very easily could have been just a huge flop. But instead, it kind of got a cult following, and yeah, they got picked up to do Rushmore, and I'm pretty sure Disney was the studio that produced it.
Really?
I'm pretty sure. I'll have to double check in Letterboxd in a minute, but yeah, I'm fairly certain. I'm fairly certain that was the case because in some of the interviews I was listening to, he talked about Disney. So Touchstone. It says Touchstone. Is Touchstone owned by Disney? Why is he talking about
owns
Disney?
everything.
I don't
Disney
know. They
owns
probably
everything.
own Touchstone. For all I know, they own Touchstone. But anyways,
It says here, halfway done Wikipedia article says that they distributed it, so they were one of the
okay.
5 that took place in distributing it so they were involved.
Yeah. So I know for sure like Disney was involved somehow, because he talks about Disney like saying no to giving him money for something. We'll get into that, but yeah. So he gets picked up for his sophomore film, and one of the things that stood out about it to me was that transition was Wes and Owen. Bottle Rocket was their movie.
Mm-hmm.
They had some people that kind of led them along the way. Jim Brooks producing it and Polly Platt and these kind of people that were mentoring them. But it was their movie, and it's kind of out of Jim Brooks's wheelhouse as far as like his style and everything. And so he had some input, but he didn't have a whole lot to say. So really they got to make their movie. And so, I can't remember. I think we're, talking about Bottle Rocket. I think we talked about, how Jim Brooks was like, man, this created a freedom of expression for these guys, making this movie how they wanted it and it getting a cult following. And so here, I think really Rushmore is like the culmination of that. So they got to make the movie mostly the way they wanted it. They had their hands tied with a few things, but they get picked up for this one, and they've got an actual budget to make a movie with, and they get to make their movie. Rushmore is like, this is Wes and Owen's movie, and they made it the way they wanted to make it.
It seems like their full heart and soul were kind of tossed into it.
And it's not just like they wrote it and they got to like shoot all the scenes they wanted, but like Wes got to use the camera he wanted. He got to, and actually I was in an interview, Wes even said that there was only one scene they cut.
Wow.
They filmed all the scenes. He said, other than like, oh, we cut out a line here or there, like there was only one scene that was cut from what they filmed. So he knew exactly what he wanted to do, and he did it. And there was just one scene. It was when Max gets expelled. There was like a scene of him like getting his books out of the locker and some other stuff, and that's the only thing they cut, which is incredible. Like,
oh my gosh,
um,
you cut 45 minutes out of a film usually. Like that's insane.
yeah. And so, I don't know how many like extra lines and, stuff like that they cut, how much that might have added up to, but yeah. But yeah, it's, Jim Brooks, who produced Bottle Rocket, who kind of like was the one that got it made. He, in an interview, he was saying like, because they made that movie the way they wanted to, then they kind of set themselves up for being able to just make a career of that, making movies that the way they wanted to. Not, so many directors end up in this cycle of like one for us and one for them sort of thing. Like one for us, one the way we want to do it, and one for the studio the way they want it done. To make, the box office money. But they, which is really cool. Like, it's cool to see these guys that want to make a movie get to like start their career like making 2 movies like the way they want to do it.
Very early on it seems that Wes decided he wasn't as interested in the studio game as he was in the community game. Very quickly you see him start to kind of gather his posse, gather his team, getting Bill Murray to sort of hop onto that train here, and then discovering Jason Schwartzman and Owen and Luke, and sort of like developing that like, hey, this is my team, and studios are going to have to listen to us. We're not going to listen to studios. And that's how he's been able to make all these incredible movies, which are so different from everything else these studios are putting out.
Yeah. Yeah. And they, Wes in an interview too, he said, this concept or this movie, like this kind of character and the ideas kind of surrounding it, they were even there. They wanted to make this movie before even they made Bottle Rocket. Him and Owen kind of had the concept for this.
Max seems like a character that's fully fleshed. Like he seems like a character that was sat on for a long time.
Yeah, for sure. And he, obviously he's inspired by events from Wes and Owen's life. Owen went to a private school in Dallas, and he was expelled from that private school.
Naturally.
I guess that makes sense. But and then he ended up having to go to a public school just like Max. Wes went to a private school in Houston. He directed plays at his school in Houston. Didn't make the best grades, even though he's really smart, just like Max. So it's, you've got those things tied up in there. It's funny though, when you it's funny anytime you in an interview you see people asking Wes questions like, oh, is it inspired by you, is Max you, kind of thing. He's always kind of like, well, yes and no. Like, he doesn't ever want to say like, oh yeah, it's for sure me. I'm
sure that's the challenge of writing a character inspired by yourself.
And I think I get it to a degree. He's like, in an interview with Charlie Rose, I wrote down a quote. He said, he was talking about that, like, who is this character me? And he's like, yeah, it's a little bit of me, it's a little bit of Owen, but he's like, it's not supposed to be like, oh, this is me. It's more like he was making a character that was like, if I was 15, if I would have seen this movie when I was 15, like it would have been my movie and it would have changed me because of this character. Which I thought was a really cool, like, way to think about it. Like, yes, it's like inspired by things that happened to me and maybe a little bit of mine and Owen's personality, but also like I wanted to make kind of like fantasy, like if I was 15, what would I need to see, kind of thing. What sort of character would like grab me? So in that sense, it's like, it's kind of inspired by like a fantasy version of himself almost, like, which is, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
And it wasn't only inspired by like Wes and Owen, but also just like his experience. Like he shot it literally at his high school,
Yeah,
his alma
that's
mater.
incredible. Really,
Um,
at the same school?
yeah, yeah.
Wow.
He even like in interviews like, oh, did you see people you knew while you were? It wasn't like surreal shooting like in your hometown, like. And Wes was like, not, I saw a few people, but he was like, I was in a hotel and we were like working
Yeah.
and I was shooting at the school, but I didn't like, I saw my parents, they stopped by, like his brother was there a lot, but he
Yeah.
didn't really like, he saw maybe one or two friends
Yeah.
that happened
He
to
wasn't
swing
trotting
by.
around
But
the city or
yeah,
anything.
he actually said, his 10-year high school reunion was going on while they were shooting. They had to do a night shoot one night, and he didn't go to his 10-year high school reunion, even though he was in town because he was doing a night shoot that night.
That's funny.
Yeah, it's really funny. But yeah, so yeah, so it's just like, man, this is his movie and Owen's movie. Like this is them, and it's uh I think I think that's one of the reasons why I love it.
Yeah,
But
I think that's the purpose of coming of age movies really as a whole, is for someone to reflect on their life, look at their experiences, look at the things that they did, and then wonder, man, if only I'd have seen someone else talking about it, I wouldn't have made those decisions, or maybe I wouldn't have failed in the areas that I did fail. So I think this is a beautiful testament of like Owen and Wes desiring to take the insecurity that they had as a high school student and look back to the high school students who they know are still dealing with all the same things and say like, hey, it's okay. We're all in this cycle of growing up together, and everyone's got weaknesses, from the oldest person, the headmaster of the school, to the teacher that you've got a crush on, to the little kids that are looking up to you. We all have fallen short. We've all failed, and it's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and yeah, I love that. That's cool. And man, you mentioned like his like kind of posse, his community earlier, and so I wanted to hit on, before we get into like key points in the movies, just talking about like them making the movie. There were two actors that really like made this thing happen, and one of them was Bill Murray. Wes said like from the get-go he had Bill Murray in mind. He had some movies where he just like saw something in the way Bill Murray acted, like this kind of like confident, like but sad underneath guy, that he was like, this is the person I want in this movie. And so he kind of wrote it with Bill in mind, kind of thinking all along like, I'll have to find somebody that won't quite measure up to what I have in mind. But he ended up I think it was Bill Murray's agents, like his agents, whatever, they liked the script, and so they get, Wes got them to give it to Bill, and so like Bill gets the script. They're like, hey, there's these guys, they're making this movie. They wanted to see if you would be interested, and like Bill, it's funny, like Bill reads the script, and he's like, yeah, I think I want to do it. And so I watched on the Criterion Collection. There's a long interview with Charlie Rose and Bill Murray, and Bill was just kind of talking about how he read the script and he was like, he loved it because when he read it, he was like, this guy knows exactly what he wants.
Yeah.
He said it's rare to. He says a lot of times he'll read a script and he's like, okay, there's some things to work with here. I can, I'm going to have to like do this and help out here, for this script. But I think I can, I think I'll enjoy doing it. But he said with this one, it was like, he read it and he was like, I don't have a whole lot to add. He knows exactly what he wants. And he was like, so I'm going to do it. He, apparently Bill too, like in another interview had said like, that he read that script, he called Wes and told him he was going to do the movie. They actually like talked about some random movie that Bill loves that Wes hadn't seen, and they like talked about that for like 30 minutes, and then he was like, yeah, I'm going to do the movie. They didn't really talk about Rushmore. He hadn't seen Bottle Rocket even. Like, he was like, yeah, I'm going to do it. And
that.
so,
so
yeah, yeah. When listening to that interview and hearing Bill talk about it, is like, man, I respect Bill Murray so much more. He's such a cool guy.
Well, this was the same year as Ghostbusters, right? 98?
No, Ghostbusters was 80s.
Oh, it was. Dang.
Yeah.
Thought I had a cool insight there. I was gonna be like, man, he's working with some cool stuff.
No, but Ghostbusters was just, but Ghostbusters was like peak, was like Bill Murray's peak. So this is kind of coming back. He did, I think Groundhog Day was early. Yeah, Groundhog Day was 80. Was it early 90s?
Yeah, it was early 90s.
Yeah.
That might have been the one. Groundhog Day is a Wes Anderson movie in disguise, man. Like,
yeah, and that's one of the movies that he mentioned, like, that Bill Murray was like, yeah, Groundhog Day Bill Murray is gonna be Mr. Bloom. So,
oh yeah,
but yeah, Bill didn't even he decided he was going to do the film. They got in talks about, like, here's kind of what we maybe can pay you. And Bill was like, just give me my SAG rate, his Screen Actors Guild rate, which is like in the several hundred thousands. But Wes said he actually didn't end up taking that. Did you catch how much I had in the notes before I took it out? I wanted to see if you could guess what he made.
No.
Did you see it? Okay.
I didn't see that.
Let me see if you can guess how much Wes said that Bill Murray made making this movie.
I can't imagine Bill Murray at that quality take anything less than like 10,000, 15,000.
Wes said that Bill Murray made $9,000.
$9,000.
9,000. That's what Wes said in an interview.
Wow.
9,000. Yeah. I
mean, that's high caliber at this point.
That's
man.
nothing. Like, I mean, that's like, that would be great for me.
Oh,
but
yeah.
Like, that would be like me spending like months and months making, like, I guess like the equivalent would be like, yeah, I'll do it for like, give me $200 and I'll spend months making this with you. Like,
yeah.
It's incredible. And even, I was talking about a scene earlier that Wes wanted done. It was a helicopter scene he wanted, that was going to cost like $25,000. And the studio was just like, we're just not going to we're not going to fund that one. And so Bill Murray like went to Wes, took Wes a check, and he was like, here's a check, you if you want to do the scene, I trust you.
Bill came out negative on Rushmore.
Well, so he didn't end up shooting it. So he didn't end up doing that scene, but he said he still has the check.
Man,
yeah, funny. He still has the check that Bill. So basically, like, Bill Murray was, if they ended up doing that scene, he was going to come out negative for sure on the movie. Yeah. Like, he was going to make $9,000 and then pay $25,000 for a helicopter shot scene, which is, I mean, that's incredible.
Oh yeah, to be so sold in, just about it must have been so fun to be on that set, man.
Yeah,
like,
yeah, and you can see, if you watch like the making of documentary that Wes Anderson's brother made, there's some like little sections with Bill like interacting with people, and it's like, he's loving being there. It's so cool, and and I think that's a huge testament to like them being able to get the movie they made. When you have like a guy like Bill in your corner, that's like, these guys know what they're doing. I trust them. I'm gonna make pocket change on this movie because he even said, these are guys that I'm willing to go down on the ship with.
And then he did go down on the ship a couple movies later in Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou. So
yeah, sure. But at that point, he was sold, like he was in with Wes. Yeah. So. Awesome. Really cool. Yeah. Did you have any notes on Bill in this movie, or like?
Yeah, man. I don't know. This kind of puts Bill in like a nice little niche. I feel like he seems like a bit more fun of an actor once he gets into this. Like, not that it necessarily changed the trajectory of his career, but I think in this movie you can see the personality of Bill Murray, like on full display. Like, I don't know. Whenever I watch Wes Anderson movies that Bill is involved in, I think that I see his personality there. He's not even necessarily playing a character a lot of times. It's I guess the way I would frame it is like if you see like a fantastic actor at like a sketch club downtown or something, at like an improv comedy club, just having a good time, shooting it on a whim. It kind of feels like a time in Bill's career where he's like, I want to, we talked earlier about the one for them, one for me kind of thing, where Bill just kind of transitions and he's like, I'm going to do one for me and everything. And I'm not going to make these blockbusters anymore, but ironically, he's in, Quantumania or whatever, that Marvel movie. Ironically, we're speaking about him not cashing out anymore.
He had to make up for only making 9,000 in Rushmore, I guess.
Yeah, he's trying to get it full packed. But it's a cool moment. It's a cool season in Bill Murray's career to look at, deciding to be a part of this posse and then sort of riding this as his primary gig getter in Wes Anderson for like this long stretch of his career.
Yeah. And the other guy that really made this movie work is Jason Schwartzman. This was his first film.
Dude, that's wild. I read that and I was like, there's no way.
Yeah. Yeah, his first film. They did casting for like a year. They went to England and Scotland. Like Wes was like, maybe we'll just have the guy kind of have this English accent and we'll just like kind of pretend he's like kind of putting on a fake English accent, but it'll actually really be speaking in a real English accent. They were that desperate. And it was toward the end of casting, Jason walks in and he even made a Rushmore blazer. Like he walked in with a blazer on with an R on it that he had like made himself. And they did the audition and Wes, it's so cool. Wes was like, when he came in and auditioned, I was fine. Like, okay, I can make this movie. That's how like essential.
Awesome.
Yeah. That's how essential he was, his kind of personality and acting was to making this work.
What a Max thing to do. What a Max thing to do. Make your own blazer to show up.
Yeah. Yeah. Make your own way. They made this movie. They had Bill in their corner, and they really like avoided the Hollywood plot mechanics. Like when you think about this movie, just kind of getting more into the movie itself. You're never like, in a typical like Hollywood, plot. It's like, okay, I know the character's going to have like a rise and then a fall and then another rise. But really, Max is just kind of like, it's a lot of falling and you're not really sure. Like, is he gonna like ever grow? What's gonna happen here? And really like he kind of, I don't know. It's interesting. There's not really like a plot per se in a lot of Wes Anderson films, because he is more interested in characters than really in plot. Yeah. And you really see that here, with this, but, one of the things that I noted about the movie is, this is something he wanted to do for Bottle Rocket and really like was kind of, had his hands tied with the way he could shoot it and stuff. But, he got to shoot this whole movie in anamorphic widescreen. And I don't know if you know what that means.
Dude, explain that to me. I have no idea what that means.
So I don't either. So this is
great.
This is me explaining something about filming and lenses that I don't have any clue about, but I've read a little bit, enough to like talk. So like basically like in like anamorphic widescreen, like one of the things that you get is there's less loss of like depth of focus. So like one of the reason, there's a little bit of like distortion on the ends, like there's a lot of like, you can do deep dive into like these different lenses they use, like these different ways they shoot. But the cool, I'm not going to get into all that because I'll just make myself look dumb because I don't know what I'm talking about.
We're not going to pretend to talk about something we don't know about.
No. But what is interesting to me and what I do know about him shooting in this is that, you know, he kind of talks about you can just fit more information into the frame. So like he the quote that I wrote down is Wes kind of said, at the end of the day, it's less like this like really thought out aesthetic goal and choice and more. The quote I wrote was, Wes said, "What a wonderful shape to make these pictures in."
What a Wes thing to say.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. What a Wes thing to say. What a wonderful shape. And you know, the big thing is, you know, when you don't have as much loss of like the depth of focus, you can have, so you think about the way that Wes shoots. A lot of times he'll, like in dialogue cuts, cutting back and forth, you'll have like you'll have the character like kind of on one side of the frame in the dialogue cuts, and like the background, what's going on in the background is not like out of focus. It's not like you can see everything. And that's what Wes kind of talked about. He said, you can basically, like, I can fit more information in here. So when you think about like
the f-stop is what that's called on the technical end. The f-stop would be like, it would remove that blur and bokeh there. So like you're not having a split focus like what like Hitchcock coined back in the day. You know, you're not having a split focusing thing. That's interesting. Cause like even on like the montage in the beginning, when it's going through like all of Max's different random clubs that he started up, like it's all like vision. You don't see any real crazy depth, and that's what kind of creates that like dollhouse look that Wes gets so often.
Yeah, and that's his thing. Like he puts so much thought into like the production design and the sets and like what information am I putting? Because that's how he talks about making movies. Like he has this list of ideas and things, and that's how he starts making a movie. And so when he's like, let me get this big, like wide frame that I can use that doesn't lose like any depth of focus, so that I can put like all this information in the background in the set. Like people walk, maybe there's someone in the background, like you can see them too. He was like, maybe I can, whenever he's like, I can have the character here, and then you can have this person here and this person here kind of in the background, but you can see all of them clearly. Like, and so just that idea of like, he has so much information he wants to pass. And you kind of get that, like the more you watch his movies, the more you're like, man, this set, like what's going on in the background, just like it's all about adding to the character or like the world that the character lives in, which is really cool. So I just thought that I had known nothing about shooting in lenses. I've listened to a little bit of like No Film School podcasts and stuff like that, and so I'm trying to like grasp that sort of stuff more. Well,
and he's able to expertly, like you said, so early in his career, he's already mastering all of the technical sides. He's able to very expertly jump between shots that encompass the entire depth that you see and keeps everything in focus. And then like I think of there's a focus rack that's really hard in the very beginning whenever the camera looks from the geometry problem on the board that Max is having the dream of straight to the professor. And you can see it sort of like warp out, and it gives you that cool, you start to feel it already. And then he's able to switch it up again. And whenever Max first sees Rosemary and he's like looking through the classroom, it's completely blurred everything else except for her. So he's like isolating her in this shot as sort of, I guess, a picture of Max's mind is so many places, and he's seeing everything all at once. And then he sees this idea of love, this idea of, I guess, really his mother in this person, and then a desire for a partner, a mate in this person, this infatuation that 15-year-olds have with their teachers, and everything else blurs away. Yeah. He's only focused on him. Yeah. It's super cool.
Yeah, and he's even looking, if I'm not mistaken, maybe he's not at that point, but I think is he looking through a fish tank at that point? or not?
He was looking. That was whenever he was creeping outside. When he was being
Okay,
creepy.
so
He
this
was
is
looking through the doorway because he thought he was in the
that's
wrong,
right.
wrong classroom. Yeah.
Yeah, because you kind of get that sort of effect, like looking through the fish tank sort of thing too. But
Yeah. Oh, and
yeah,
every time it's a repeat thing. Every time he makes contact with her when she's not looking, he's completely drawn in and focused.
yeah, yeah, and yeah, it's really cool. The way he shoots is just so good. I had noted there were some Wes Anderson firsts, like kind of like cliche Wes Anderson like touches that he puts. So like one you mentioned already is it's in that club montage where it's going through all of, like the clubs and like it's the annotations. So like that's something that like starts showing up in Wes Anderson films, is those annotations, basically like, you know, the writing on the screen that's giving you more information. Again, it goes back to like, I want to give them as much information as I can. So he was like, I don't want them to just see him in all these clubs. I want them to know like this is the name of the club and this is Max's like he's the founder, or he's like the assistant, or he's whatever. Yeah.
And the Futura right there, that font Futura shows up, and he hangs on to that forever.
Yeah, I think Futura is in Bottle Rocket too.
Yeah,
like, I think he's
okay, cool.
I think he's like sticks to that from the get go.
Yeah,
like that's
he's
him.
made a switch with Asteroid City, so we'll see how the change of font fares him. But
yeah, that might mess everything up. We'll have to see.
It's a complete flop because there's no Futura.
But yeah, the other thing that is a Wes Anderson first is the close-ups in widescreen. So like, you know, we talked about he shoots in this widescreen, but he has a lot of these like close-ups, and a lot of them he mentions, and it's really like you see this in Bottle Rocket, but it's like even more so here is those straight on close-ups where you're looking at like the person that you're looking at is in the center of the frame and you're looking straight on them instead of like at an angle, which is what a lot of directors will do in Hollywood.
Yeah, he definitely breaks the mold. When Max and Rosemary are having the conversation on the bleachers when they first meet, and he's like, Latin stupid, and she's like, I love Latin, and he's like, okay, now I'm going to get Latin back. They're speaking to each other, but it's still just so they're right in the middle of the frame, which is so unconventional for any.
Yeah, Wes says it's kind of like John. He mentions Jonathan Demme in an interview, which if you think of like the one most people will probably think of is Silence of the Lambs. So you think of those shots where Hannibal Lecter is just like in the front, like he's just like that. Obviously a very different tone that Wes is going for, but
completely different.
Yeah, but he saw like in Jonathan Demme films, and he was like, I like that. I want to use that.
Yeah. Awesome.
But he uses it totally differently. Like, it really
different
cool.
Purpose, different mood it gives to the viewer.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. And so, one of the things that I wanted to really like, hone in on here is something that like, I think we're going to see over and over again through his movies, and that's the tension between like really extreme artifice. So just thinking about like this movie is artificial. Like this is, when you watch this, you're not like, you don't think like, oh, this is the real world. You know that you're watching a movie. And Wes even does like things like the curtains. You'll have like the curtain that says like January, it'll like project it on it and then it'll come across. And that's actually like, he filmed those like with the words projected onto the curtain, and like
that's cool.
Coming out, and like he filmed those, and his agent was like, man, that really takes me out of the movie. I can't. And Wes was like, that wouldn't have, it's not, it just doesn't feel real. Like, like he's like, that you're seeing like these curtains filmed, and he's like, it takes me out of the movie. And it's like, Wes is just like, I know, like that's how I want it.
Yeah. One of my favorites is like when someone's punched in a Wes Anderson movie. It always looks so fake.
Oh yeah,
like it's supposed to. Like it's supposed to feel almost like you're watching a play rather than a movie. Like this isn't an action movie. A punch is hilarious. It's one of the funniest punchlines. Lack of there's a pun there for you. Funniest punchlines in the Wes Anderson movies when it's just.
Yeah, I'll give you one of these.
I was punched.
Yeah. Sorry, I have a soundboard over here. I had to actually use it for once.
Keep 'em
Uh,
coming.
but yeah, so you get this tension. There's that extreme artifice. So you watch this and it's artificial, but there's a tension between that and this like super authentic emotion. So you see, you watch this movie and you're like, oh, I'm watching something that is not real, that is artificial, that is like this kind of storyboard, kind of like sets and characters, but at the same time, there's just like extremely deep and authentic emotion on display, and it's like what's going on here. And I don't know. Did you have any thoughts on that tension between those two things?
Absolutely, and I think that's a tension that Wes uses throughout all of his films. Like just not to turn this into a Fantastic Mr. Fox podcast, but Fantastic Mr. Fox is the silliest movie ever. It's little fox people running around that sound like George Clooney and Meryl Streep.
Right.
But there's so much authenticity. There's so much true and honest emotion there. And it's not lacking at all in Rushmore, where we see this humor in like pain, I guess, if that makes sense. Like, we almost laugh at the character's misfortunes. And then because it feels fake, it feels like you're watching something that isn't meant to be taken seriously. And then that's where Wes is able to kind of sneak in and plant these seeds where you're really thinking about what was your life as a 15-year-old like. And you can relate to each different person in this movie because we see them all grow throughout the entire movie. It's not just Max's story. It's Max's and Rosemary's and Blum's, and it's all of them. But no, I think absolutely he's able to expertly balance the portions of this movie that just feel like, okay, absolutely, that would never happen. Like, and I think that's a lot of critique on people have on Wes Anderson, that those that don't like his work, where they'd feel like, oh, well, I can't take it seriously. But if you just buy in and you let the curtains go away and you stay with full attention, something can really, really begin to turn in your heart.
Yeah. Yeah. He, the kind of like, oh, this would never happen. Like he talks about an interview, like, would Max actually like ride his bike into a steel factory and like know how to cut the brakes on Bloom's car? And he's like, probably not. But he kind of, I wrote down this quote. He said, it's only in the world of the movie that's even possible. And so it's kind of this idea of like, you can do things in movies that are not possible in real life, whether it's like character based or just like what's happening in the world. And so like, why not do it? Because if you like it, then do it. Yeah. But yeah, kind of going off of that, it's those, Wes kind of talks about how all of his movies like are comedies, but they kind of have this turn somewhere in the movie where like the motion of it just like becomes full force. Like, and it's like you said, it's still funny, but it's, there's like just a heavy emotion. Like it gets dark or it gets deep.
A character,
and you kind of see this like this connection of death between these three characters. Max has lost his mother. He even writes his plays like on his typewriter, and you see like, oh, his mom gave him this typewriter. And then Miss Cross, her, Edward Appleby, her husband, like, that was like the adventurer, oceanographer, like died. And obviously, you have Bloom. He kind of has, maybe I'm not thinking of this correctly, but like he kind of has like the death of his marriage. Like, the death of the life that he's built for himself kind of dies. So it's a more metaphorical, like, I'm not missing, like, did he actually have a real person in his life die?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think it's more of just this idea
Yeah.
of like the life that he has built for himself, just kind of like he has kids he doesn't like, his wife is like sleeping with someone else, like
Yeah.
he's just like, so they're kind of like related to each other. And then you have the soundtrack is just like incredible in this movie. The score obviously is very like, this is the first like, it's the same composer as Bottle Rocket, but this one is just like, man, the score is just like Wes Anderson score. But
Oh
on
yeah.
top of that, it's the soundtrack. You have these needle drops where like a scene happens and the soundtrack, like the song from the soundtrack just drops. You drop the needle on that track and it's just like perfect. Like this is the perfect track for this moment. And it's very I saw you had written down like it's very Scorsese like, and I was thinking the
Yeah.
same thing. And actually, in a Esquire interview, Scorsese, he was kind of talking about Bottle Rocket and Rushmore, and he talks about like how there's that moment at the end of Bottle Rocket where there's that needle drop. I can't remember the song. I think it's 2000 Man or something like that. And he said it's like this transcendent moment. So like even Scorsese, who's like one of the kings of the needle drop, is like, oh yeah, this guy's got it.
Oh
And
yeah.
I think every single like song that plays in this movie is like the perfect song for the moment. Like, oh
Absolutely.
man,
He's just got a way to kind of form it, like
yeah,
across
and
his
it's
movies. They're always incredible. Even like
yeah,
Portuguese David Bowie in Life Aquatic. Like he just,
yeah.
it's so absurd, but he's able to nail it.
Yeah, and it's not even like, it's not just like, oh, this is the perfect song for the moment, but it like emphasizes something about the characters. Like going
Mhm.
back, like he's so interested in the characters, it'll emphasize Max's like teenage impulsiveness,
Yeah.
or it'll emphasize how like Rosemary Cross is like getting herself, she's being reckless and like endangering her job, sort of
Yeah.
thing. Or like it'll emphasize Bloom's like middle-aged breakdown. I think you think of the scene that's like basically like out of The Graduate, where you know he sees his wife, he even like looks over at his wife, and you kind of can see, oh, she's sleeping with a younger man.
Yeah.
You think of The Graduate, then he jumps in and he's like, it's the underwater shot. And yeah, it's just like, it's the perfect song to emphasize the character, what's happening in that character's life.
Yeah. And then that little
um
kid swims by. It's funny
yeah.
stuff. Yeah, it's a beautiful scene.
Yeah, but yeah,
Dude, I would not have jumped in that pool either.
yeah, I
You
don't
see how
know,
green that stuff was?
it was pretty gross.
Yeah, I'm not hopping in.
um yeah, I don't know, what were there any things that you wanted to make sure to highlight as far as like just thoughts on the movie, themes or techniques? Or I know you had a few things written down in the notes.
Yeah. If we're just diving in, man, I guess the biggest theme that I've been hanging on to is just that theme of like youthful insecurity. Max is a deeply insecure
Mm-hmm.
figure that we're watching here, and he's trying to find his security throughout the movie in different places. Like as soon as there's someone else who seems to offer that amount of security, he latches on. From the
Mm-hmm.
first scene when he wakes up from his dream, where he's again in that dream finding insecurity in his like desire to be able to impress an entire classroom, and he immediately wakes up, makes eye contact with Bloom, and then he's like, oh, well, this is the person I need to follow. This is the person who has got it all figured out. This is the person who can lead me into greatness. He's got the ideas, and following him out of the room. And I think there was even a hint there where you can kind of see that he's even moving past the affection that he has for Guggenheim, Brian Cox's character. And he's
Mm-hmm.
sort of like, okay, I'm done with you, as if maybe before the film he had some appreciation for him, and then kind of moving on to, this is my new guy here.
Mm-hmm.
And the insecurity begins there. And then he latches onto
Yeah.
Rosemary as soon as he sees her. And it's just this journey of him trying to find something to secure himself in, and eventually realizing in like the final smash cut of the end of the movie that there really is nowhere to place your security 100% in. There will always be, if you're placing your security in something outside of yourself, there will always be something that will fail you, that will slip from under your feet. I think that's the biggest one that hit me, man. It's just, I saw a lot of my high school self in Max. I was somebody who was in all the clubs. I was someone who did all the sports. I was someone who tried to be a leader in every aspect that they could be. And when you're leading for just the sake of being seen as a leader, it gets empty. It gets shallow.
Yeah,
quickly.
man. Yeah, and he one of the lines that stood out to me, it's towards the end. Obviously, like, all the characters have gone through a lot of, like, you've got this kind of like love triangle, like they go through all this hurt and pain, and hurting each other. And Rosemary kind of, Miss Cross says to Max something to the effect of like, sorry, that I hurt you. And Max looks at her and he says, I didn't get hurt that bad. But like, it's a funny line, but it's also like, it's kind of that idea of like learning from your loss and pain. Like, he's looking back on everything. And he's like, yes, like I got hurt, but like I really grew through all of this.
And I'm sure like he's able to reflect on his life and see that a rejection from a woman that he knows is too old for him is still like nothing into the real pain that he's processing through the whole movie is the loss of his mother. And like he can say like in hindsight, the pain of losing my mother and the longing that I feel and desire to have her back is really nothing compared to you rejecting me, because I kind of knew it was going to happen in the end anyway if I let my walls down and stop being a sociopath, which Max is, I believe, a full and complete sociopath here. Drop that from what I'm thinking and be real with my situation, that I've experienced a lot of pain and I'm putting it onto you because you're the most recent person who's hurt me, not because you've hurt me the deepest.
Yeah. And it's really like, I guess like let's kind of move to, with that idea, let's kind of move to kind of the end. We kind of see, I don't know. One thing I wrote down is that it turns out, Max, who the whole movie you kind of like pity, and you kind of like feel like, oh, Max is just naive, because he kind of envisions this perfect world where like he gets to do what he wants to do and have the relationships he wants to have. And he kind of like pictures and tries to like control this world because he has this like vision of this perfect world. Like it's like, the whole time he's trying to control something that can't be controlled. And you kind of pity him for that. But, I kind of wrote down, it turns out he's not really so naive for envisioning a perfect world. It goes back to that kind of overarching theme you see in Wes of like, you kind of like create this artificial world so that you can put these flawed characters in and hold it kind of out here and like look at it and kind of fully know like, this is the world. These are the characters in it. This is how they've messed this perfect vision up. And like, in the end, like Max, instead of like using his art for, his art and his kind of talents for, showing off his own cleverness, which is a very like immature thing to do. And that's kind of how he is for most of the movie. In the end, he uses his art to like heal people, to heal relationships. And it's like I was sitting there and he's announcing his play, and you see, he dedicates it to his mother, Eloise, and it cuts to his dad, and his dad is tearing up, and dedicated to Edward Appleby, a friend of a friend. And it cuts to Rosemary, and she's like tearing up. And then like you get to the end of the play with like Tom Cruise-esque uh,
Oh yeah.
Jason Schwartzman as Max, with his glasses and everything. And it cuts to like, and it's very silly. Like you're watching it and you're like, this is kind of like a silly high school play, but it cuts to Bloom, who is Max knows is a Vietnam vet, and he's tearing up. He's connected to, it's hard to say, like, is he connecting to like the material, or is he just like emotional over the fact that, Max would make this so obviously like for him, and it's just like, man, that's just a cool, like, to see Max grow into this person that isn't going to use what he loves to like show off himself, but like to try to do some healing.
And it kind of parallels with the priest and gangster and drug bust, whatever play that's happening earlier in the movie. Where he gets,
which that's actually a like riff on Serpico, which I've never seen, but
I haven't either.
It's apparently a riff on Serpico.
But he gets so mad at the priest character, that off the record, I 100% thought was Andrew Garfield the first time I watched this. I was like, did Andrew Garfield have a sleeper? Go back and watch it and tell me you're not like, oh my gosh. Anyway, going back to that movie, he gets so pissed that he forgot to say like cannoli.
Yeah.
Like he was like, what happened to cannoli? And he was like, it didn't feel right, so I cut it out. And he's losing that grip on like, I want to make you be perfect in this world that I'm envisioning. And I think that at the end, he's able to realize that like he can't move people like they're players in a play. You can't give people lines to say. All you can do is be prepared for the worst and be prepared for the best. And to just be present, just be ready. And I think that is the moment where he begins, not the Serpico moment, but the ending moment is where he decides, like, look at the success and look at the joy that I can bring by, instead of looking inward and trying to satisfy my own desire to be perfect and be secure in what I'm making, I can look outward and, like you said, help people begin to heal. Put on something that, in hindsight is probably silly for, PTSD reasons, to show a Vietnam vet a play about Vietnam. But to have elements all throughout interspersed that are able to bring his dad to an emotional state, Bloom to an emotional state, Rosemary to an emotional state. And really, like, I don't think that main character is him in that movie. I don't think that that's him. Like, I don't think this is him saying, look at my life, I'm going to glorify it. And I think perhaps there's some imagery there. Maybe I'm reading way too far in with like he's the only character that have the deep camouflage paint over his face that is sort of blending him in with the rest of the crowd. But it seems like he's ready to begin telling stories that aren't something that's meant to glorify him. And I think that's where his not so naivety, as you say, lands, because he's able to stop looking inward and begin to look outward.
Yeah. And I think too, it shows like the maturity of Wes Anderson as a filmmaker, like as a story writer too, and a filmmaker, this early in his career, like that idea of, I'm going to make what I like. Max makes this play, like he likes it. Like he's doing what he loves to do. And he's doing it the way he wants to do it. But there's this, like, it's not for like self-glorification for Wes. It's like, okay, how can I make this world how can I do something that I love to do, make this world so that like maybe people can see something that can be healing for them in some way. And I think that's what art is for. It's not real, but it brings real, it makes you face something in a real way. That's, that's something that art does, whether movies or not, it makes something that's not real, but it gives you a perspective on it, whatever it may be, a painting, a film, music. and it makes you encounter something from a different perspective, or it helps you like, it reflects something about you back to yourself that maybe you had been pushing away, and makes you like, forces you to kind of deal with it, or like, that sounds kind of harsh, but like come to terms with it, I guess, is a less harsh way of saying it, and I think that's what Max does at the end of this movie, and I think that's what Wes wants to do, is like he wants to make something that's like fun and like this interesting world, but also like have these characters in it that like hopefully like connect with the audience in a way where they can kind of learn something about themselves, or learn something about the world that is helpful in like building both self-awareness and like empathy, for others. So,
and that goes back to the first thing that we said starting this conversation, man, that like Rushmore is not it's not a memoir of Wes's life, though it's heavily inspired. It's not a memoir. It's a coming of age movie. It's a if I'd have seen this movie when I was that age, like you said, if I'd have seen this movie, what would I have done differently? And I think that's the big theme here that Wes is wrestling with, that will begin to project the rest of his career. That, like, what are things that I can put artistically into the world that force people, like we had talked earlier about Darjeeling, which you said is one that tends to be the lower one. Darjeeling is dealing with some heavy themes of reuniting family, and all of these themes throughout his films are forcing us to deal with these things, sort of sneaking these things in and saying, you need to address this sooner or later because life is not perfect. Life is dirty. Life is broken. And you need to bring these things into the light. You need to have a discussion about them.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's wrap this up on Rushmore. I'll let you actually, so I'll go first. Just ending with ratings. I have my handy dandy film studies notebook, which I found on Amazon, made for different directors. And they let you like do a little critique of the production. But man, it was hard for me not to give just everything just glowing. But man, really, like, there were some things that I noticed, like, that I just felt like were just, even though this is his sophomore film, even though like he's just getting his career going, I just think like there were a few things that were just like already just 10 out of 10. He just like does so well. For one, like, to me, the writing is just, it's just so good. Just think about like Bill Murray reads the script, and he's like, this guy knows what he wants to do. I want to make this movie for nothing. Like, so I gave the writing a 10 out of 10. I gave the set design 9 out of 10 because I think like he grows in that sort of thing, but this is still such a, it's just because he knew it. It was familiar.
Yeah.
Another thing, like the editing, he already has such an eye for these, only doing these 2 takes and like editing between them, doing the cuts between like people in dialogue, and that symmetry is already there, that is throughout his films. But yeah, this is my second time seeing Rushmore. I saw it years ago, and immediately it was like, this is a 5-star 10 out of 10 movie for me, and it didn't really change on this viewing. I love so much about this movie. It's fun, and it's like emotionally mature, and I love it. It's a 10 out of 10 for me. Did you what did you rate it? I haven't seen your rating, so I don't know.
I know. Kept it a secret.
Yeah.
No, man. So I watched Rushmore for the first time this week. In preparation for this, it was like my one of 2 blind spots for Wes. I hadn't seen his first 2 features. And I wasn't entirely sure what to expect because I was hesitant to go back that far and be like, man,
go backwards.
Right, his craft is so perfected in something like Grand Budapest, which is just like everything's exactly the way that he wanted to be, and where
Yeah.
I was worried that it wouldn't have that perfection. And because I know Wes's quality to just level up his production design, and because we have the blessing of hindsight, to know that he will continue to level up. It's not a 10 out of 10 for me.
Yeah.
But it is a 9
It's
out of
not
10.
for everybody. Yeah, I can respect that.
It comes in at a 9. It's right to the races. Not because it's bad, not because it's missing much, but just because I know that Wes Anderson has the ability to just knock it out of the ballpark.
Yeah.
But just at this point in his career, he wasn't fully able to do it with the funding and with the creation. But 9 out of 10 for me.
Yeah. It's fun. Ratings don't mean a whole lot.
They don't. Nobody cares what I rate Rushmore.
Yeah, nobody cares what I rated either. But it's still fun to talk about. So we're going to talk about it.
I think it's climbed into my top 5 for sure. My top 5 Wes movies.
Wes movies, okay.
I think it's up there. Not sure where, but it feels like a top 5. So.
Yeah, obviously, being a 10 out of 10 for me, it's up there for me.
Yeah.
So that's Rushmore. Next week, we're going to be talking about the Royal Tenenbaums. So make sure you get ready for that. Cue it up on, I don't know what it's streaming on, if it is at all.
I believe it's on HBO, maybe Disney Plus, because Disney Plus owns weird stuff.
Yeah, that's true. But check it out from the library. That's what I do sometimes. But that's so that was Rushmore. Royal Tenenbaums will be next week, but we're gonna take a quick break here, and we'll be back with some movie news and a movie draft, and we're gonna have fun with that. So stick around, and we'll see you back in a minute.
Whoop! Sic transit gloria.
Hey everyone, thank you for joining us on the Establishing Shot today. We hope you're enjoying the episode so far, and we hope you'll stick around for the segments we have coming up after this quick break. But during this break, I wanted to tell you how you can get more involved with the Establishing Shot podcast. There are several ways you can do this. The main way you can do it is by going to establishingshotpod.com, our website where you can find all sorts of information like episodes with the show notes on there, information about our guests for each episode. You can find reviews there, and there's a page where you can actually leave a review on the website if you want to. You can see all the platforms where the podcast is available, like Apple, Spotify, all the major podcast platforms, and even a link to our YouTube page where you can see a video version of the podcast. So please go to the website. And the place I want to highlight there is our donate page, which has information about our Establishing Shot family. This is a way that you can subscribe to the podcast to support all the efforts and the stuff that goes into making this podcast good and making it better than it even is now. We have different tiers that you can subscribe to, starting at $5. And what this will do is you'll be able to support the podcast, help me make it better, and also at the same time, you'll get early and ad-free episodes. You'll get access to our Discord server where you can join in and just kind of talking about movies with a community that loves film. And so we would love to have you in there. And then the higher up in the tiers you go, the more you get. Even things like chats and video chats that we'll do every once in a while, where we get to talk about in more detail stuff that we're talking about on the podcast. So I hope you'll subscribe to that. Choose a tier that fits your budget, and I would love for you to support the podcast in that way. And the last thing I wanted to talk about is where you can find us on social media. You can find me personally on Twitter at @TheEliPrice, and you can also follow me on Letterboxd. Letterboxd is kind of like a social media for movie reviews, so you can read my reviews there, and you can find me there at just Eli Price, no spaces or anything. So I'm on Twitter and Letterboxd. You can find the podcast on all the social platforms as well, such as Twitter at eShotPod, and then on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok at Establishing Shot Pod. So make sure to follow us so you don't miss anything. If you have any questions or comments about the episode or about the podcast, you can always email us at establishingshotpod@gmail.com. And the very last thing I want to do before you get back into the episode today is just ask you to please go to Spotify and Apple and leave some ratings and reviews. That really helps the visibility of the podcast and gets it in more people's podcast feeds. And so we hope you will do that for us, and we would greatly appreciate it. So I hope you enjoy the rest of the episode, and I will see you next time on the Establishing Shot podcast. Hello, welcome back to the Establishing Shot. That's right. We are. I'm still here with Haydn. We are going to do some movie news now. So this is something that isn't new news, but it was new, I guess, when it came out. 22.
Yeah,
it came out at the end of last year. Yeah. So BFI, the British Film Institute, pretty sure that's what that stands for. Yes, it is. Yes. Every 10 years they release the Sight and Sound Top 250 movies, and they have I think you might know more about this. You might have looked more into it than I did, but I'm pretty sure it's like a mix of like critics and directors' choices.
Yeah,
they get to submit 10, I think.
It depends on the repertoire of the voter.
Oh, okay.
Some get like 5, 6, and then like Scorsese got like 12, I think.
Wow.
So depending on the like
to be
skin in
Scorsese.
the game you have,
yeah. Okay. Yeah. So they get basically it's open to you have to get an invite. So it's
I have not
critics.
gotten an invite yet.
Yeah, I didn't get mine. So maybe we're looking at for the, what will it be, 2032 Sight and Sound list.
The Establishing Pot gets 5 ballots.
Yeah, I'd be happy with one. I'll maybe we can submit Fantastic Mr. Fox on Hayden's behalf.
1 ballot.
But yeah, so every 10 years they do this list compiled from critics and directors and people in the film industry. They submit their selections for basically just its best movies of all time. And I guess it's kind of subjective of how you interpret that. Like it could be, I guess, movies you think are just important for people to see, or just like the movies that you think are the best, or your favorite movies, or those are all kind of different things, different perspectives. Because if you were to ask me my favorite movies, it might be different than if you ask me like, what movies do you think are important for people to see, that sort of thing. So, but yeah, this is the Sight and Sound list 2022. Came out at the end of last year. They do a top 250. It ends up being like way more than 250 just because a lot of them will tie.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the top 200, I wanted to talk a little bit about the top 100. Because there were some interesting like movings and shakings between from the 2012 list to the 2022 list.
Well, because this was like the list that like established that like Citizen Kane was the number one, like that's
right.
What got there. And everyone sort of followed after what this list said, and it's very different.
Yeah, I think Citizen Kane was like the number one on the list they started this in 52, I think was the very first list.
Long time ago.
So they've been doing it every once a decade since 52. So I'm pretty sure Citizen Kane was the number one. It wasn't the number one for the first year. I think it started the second year as number one. If I'm not, I could be. People might write in and be like, "You're so wrong," but it was number one for a number of like Sight and Sound lists. It was the number one. Probably like I want to say like 6, like probably like 3 or 4 of them, it was the number one. And then Vertigo took over
this year.
Vertigo took over the 2012
12,
list.
really? Wow.
Or was it? I can't remember if Vertigo was number one in 2002 also, but definitely 2012. And we have a new one this year. There's a new number one.
One I'm unfamiliar to.
Yeah, so Gene Dillman. It's a movie by Chantal Ankerman.
French people names.
But anyways, it's interesting because I haven't seen it. It's been on my watch list for a while. Film Spotting actually did it with they did it like an Overlooked Auteurs marathon a couple years ago, I think. Yeah. And I just didn't. Usually, I try to keep up with their marathons. It's one of the ways I like fill in movie blind spots. But I just never got around to watching that one. And this apparently, so it's this long, slow, like what you would traditionally say is like boring mundane look at the life of a woman. And so I'm trying to think, I guess it was, when did it come out? 1975. Yeah. 75. So it's like, the look at this woman in 75, very mundane. Yeah, I think it's
3 hours and 20 minutes long. Is that right?
Yeah. 202 minutes. Ooh. Yeah. So once you surpass the 180 mark, and you're up there. And if it's one of those movies that like is long and feels long, but it's supposed to feel long. This is all from just what I've, things I've heard other people say, obviously, since I haven't seen it. But yeah, it's really interesting to see, you have Vertigo at number 2, you have Citizen Kane at number 3, 2 movies that have like sat at the top of the list consistently. And all of a sudden, you have this movie, Gene Dillman, that comes out of nowhere. And it's like, I think it's really cool because it shows a trend in, these movies that like are not the Hitchcock Citizen Kane level, like getting some recognition, like, and especially a woman director. Yeah. That's one of the things, when you look at the list, you had some pretty big movies drop out of the top 100. They're still in the top 250, but like Godfather 2, Part 2, Chinatown, Raging Bull, Lawrence of Arabia, all those dropped out of the top 100. And we'll talk about some that were added, but one of the kind of categories of added movies to the top 100 that I had were women directors. So you have movies like Cleo from 5 to 7, getting like I think it's 14 now on the list. Like, wow. So, and then you have Gene Dillman was in the top 100, but it wasn't nearly close to 1. I don't think. So it jumped way up there. Yeah. So you have Daughters of the Dust, which is a really good movie. Wanda, great movie. News from Home is also a Chantal Akerman. It's actually like a kind of documentary. Mm-hmm. I've seen it. It's a really interesting film. It's basically like her reading these letters, like from her mom to and from her mom while she's in New York. And you just get all these visions of the city, like these scenes of just like the city life. It's really interesting. Anyways, you got Portrait of a Lady on Fire, Daisies, Meshes in the Afternoon. Meshes in the Afternoon jumped way up there too. It's this really like bizarre. I don't even know how to describe it. It's a short. It's 14 minutes. Wow. Yeah, you can probably go watch it like on YouTube. It's just one of those like really. It's from 43, Maya Deren, and it's for one like you have this woman that's making these films in the 40s, which is a big deal. but yeah, it's like this kind of like bizarre, like surreal. I don't know. It's hard to describe, but yeah. So you have all these women directors jumping into the top 100, and I think it's a good thing. I think
Absolutely.
for a long time it was like the white male game to be like a director, and it's
Recognized
good.
director.
It's good to see like lists like this finally giving recognition to like truly like masterpiece movies that are directed by not just like white men. You get similar with like you have movies like Moonlight jumps up there, Get Out, movies,
Yeah.
Movies made by people of color jumping in there.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they expanded the British Film Institute to include more international voters and stuff.
Yeah.
So that's making
Yeah. And that's a
huge
big
difference.
part of it. Yeah. I mean, cause you even have, so Do the Right Thing, like why Do the Right Thing wasn't already up there. I don't know why it was not already in the top 100, but it jumped up to 24. I would argue it could even be higher.
You have a fondness for Do the Right Thing. That's a special one for you too.
Yeah, it's a good one. But and then even like Totoro and Spirited Away. If you know me, you know that I love My Neighbor Totoro, and so like I guess opening up to those international critics and directors more, you get a better sense of like, okay, around the world, what are the best movies? And this is
French involved.
Yeah, you can take this list with a grain of salt, but really at the end of the day, when you look at the list, you're like, okay, yeah, these are all great movies.
Absolutely.
I was looking, I think when on Letterboxd, I pulled up the top 250 list, and I was surprised. It said I've seen 26% of them, which I was like, wow, I've seen that. I didn't expect to have seen that many. And I counted through the top 100, and I've actually seen like 48 of the top, so almost 50%. So it's still got a lot of work to do, but yeah. I was surprised, honestly. I was like, because a lot of times it'll be a list like this will come out, and I've seen like, 16% or like,
you just
8%.
Feel like you're lying as a cinephile.
Yeah, right.
You're a fraud.
Exactly. But yeah, some of the thing, I mentioned Do the Right Thing. In the Mood for Love is a movie that I think is just a masterpiece, one of the best movies ever made, I think.
Absolutely.
So to see it up there at 5 is just, I'm just like, yes.
Yeah.
And so, Totoro I mentioned already. Parasite, just like, I loved Parasite when it came out. So it's fun to see it jump up there. But you had mentioned, interesting seeing movies like Parasite, Portrait of a Lady on Fire, Get Out. A lot of times with these lists like this, it takes movies time to move up the list, because it's like, you kind of have to let time go by to see if it stands the test of time. But these movies jumped up quick into the top 100.
Absolutely. I wonder what that's going to mean in the future. Like, I wonder if we're going to look back and think that these movies were, just a moment. I would hope not, that they weren't just a moment in history, but it is definitely a strange feeling, whether it be good or bad, to see these movies make it into the top 100, dethroning things like Get Out is ahead of Rear Window, Alfred Hitchcock's Rear Window, which it's just like, you're like, wait a minute, what are the greatest films ever made? We can't call something that came out 2 years ago one of the greatest.
No, it's not ahead of Rear Window.
It's
Rear
not.
Window's at 40, and Get Out's like tied at like,
what's like
with like 5 movies at 95.
Yeah, what's like 2 spaces under Get Out?
Well, so there's there's things like Rio Bravo, Godfather Part 2, Jaws.
Those were the ones that I was like, wait a minute. Like, just, when you look at, in hindsight, Jaws just feels like it should be higher on the list. While I'm wearing my Spielberg Raiders of the Lost Ark shirt, higher on the list than something like Get Out, or even Parasite, which came out recently. It still feels like a freshman who's top of the class, and you're like, wait a minute, have you earned your stay yet?
Yeah.
But I hope these movies do own their stay because they are phenomenal pictures.
Yeah, and I could see like movies like Portrait of a Lady on Fire, like it feels like the sort of movie that could easily stay. But then like something like Get Out, which is already on the cusp, feels like, in a decade from now we might be like, yeah, Get Out still probably in the top 250, but maybe not top 100. I could see it dropping out. Not that I love Get Out, but it's just like thinking about when you think about like the greatest movies of all time that everyone should see, sort of thing. It's
we're
like
talking about the top 100 movies ever made,
right?
Like we just
ever made anywhere, anytime.
Yeah.
So yeah. So I had written down some of my blind spots that I really want to take care of. So like obviously Gene Dillman. Like it's the number one, so I got to move it up the watch list.
Oh yeah, it's got to make a priority. Got to find
3 hours to
3 hours to watch it.
Yeah, 3 hours and 22 minutes.
Yeah,
that's going to be tough to find, but I'll find it somewhere.
It's on HBO actually. Play HBO Max right now, so there you go. Just fire it up.
Yeah, there's some Hitchcock. Hitchcock is a big blind spot in general for me. I've seen Psycho. And one of his early movies called The 39 Steps. And those are only two Hitchcocks I've seen. So obviously I need to catch up with Vertigo and Rear Window. And
I've been working through them. I was given my wife gave me the complete collection, the Blu-rays for Christmas.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm working through them.
Yeah, so I want to catch up with those. I want to catch up with Cleo from 5 to 7. There's a couple of Tarkovsky. So I love Stalker. And Solaris. I just love those movies. So there's a couple other Tarkovskys in there I want to catch up with. And then
there too. Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Which I'm actually going to watch that soon because again, a film spotting marathon. They're going through some Sight and Sound blind spots. So I've been catching up with some of these that I haven't seen. Nice. Mirrors next on the list. And then Edward Yang. There's a couple of Edward Yang, which I'll also going to end up watching one of those in this film spotting marathon too. Like a Brighter Summer Day and Yi Yi. Those are some of the ones that I noticed that I'm like, I really want to catch up with these. Were there any that like stood out to you as like, oh, I want to definitely like catch up with these?
Dude, I am super interested in all of the French films.
Oh yeah.
I feel like it's just a part of cinema that I don't understand. And I just feel like I'm missing out.
Yeah.
And I'm going to spend some time in France in the next couple of weeks. We're taking a trip over to France.
Yeah.
I'm just like, man, I'm going to walk through their streets and like the closest thing I have to a French movie is like what, Midnight in Paris. I'm like, man, I'm missing out on all these French films. Like I just want to be a part of it. So
I'm not even a big fan of Midnight in Paris, to be honest.
No, I'm not a fan. My hot take is that Midnight in Paris feels like something that a sophomore in English class wrote about. Like it doesn't. Whatever. This isn't a Midnight in
People
Paris.
like it, but
I love you, Owen, but
not for me.
Make better movies.
Yeah, Owen Wilson. Yeah, but Anyway. Maybe that. I wonder if it's like you should watch some French movies before you go, or like go see France and then come back and maybe you'll have a better grasp on French movies. I wonder if that's which order would be better. Like go to France first or watch French movies first.
Because I feel like something like Beau Travail would be rough to watch before going. Like I'd be like, okay, that's my only perspective of France is, like something like that.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah, I've caught up with a few recently, like 60s. I watched Breathless recently, which I liked. I was positive on it, but it wasn't my favorite.
It's a different kind of scene.
Umbrellas of Cherbourg. I loved that. You should watch it for sure. Okay. It's a musical. You watch it and you're like, oh, so this is where La La Land came from. And Great. I know you love La La Land, so
absolutely. I'm gonna put it on the list. I'm flying out tomorrow morning.
Yeah. The difference is it's all sung. The whole movie is sung.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, interesting. But so I've caught up with a few. Yeah. And if you listen to episode 1, you'll remember I kind of talked about how Wes is really new wave, French new wave was like a huge influence on his movie making.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So, but yeah, so that's French movies for sure. La Dolce Vita, movies like that.
Yeah.
So the Sight and Sound list. If you want to find it, if you haven't heard of it, you can. Obviously, Letterboxd always has lists for these sorts of things, but also just Google it. That's what I always tell people. Like, where'd you find that? Well, just Google it. So that's our movie news. It's a little bit of old news, but still something, interesting to talk about.
Yeah.
And maybe that is news to you. Maybe you're like, I didn't know about this list. So yeah, go check it out. See what movies that you need to catch up on. So we're going to move into our movie draft, and we're kind of winging it. Dude. I sent Haydn a list of movies right before we started recording. I was like, man, because I was like, maybe we can draft from the Sight and Sound Top 100, but I was like, it's the top 100 greatest movies of all time. It's like, I'll just take any of them. There's no like, it would just kind of be us taking our favorites, which that's gonna be the case in any of it. But yeah, I don't know. I felt like it wouldn't be quite as interesting. So instead, I found a different list, and it is the list of the all-time worldwide box office movies. So you have, obviously when you.
Are you gonna say Avatar?
So, Avatar is number one.
Crazy?
Avatar is number one. Endgame, number two. Actually, Avatar: Way of Water is 3. Did you know that it had jumped up there? I did not.
Oh, I knew it. I've been following it. It's fascinating.
Titanic, number 4. Titanic was
I'm not even an Avatar guy. I'm just fascinated.
Yeah. Titanic was up there for a long time. On this, real quick, I had seen this this thread on Twitter the other day, and I didn't know this was a thing, but apparently, like, through the years, whenever like a director gets overtaken by someone else on this list, they like kind of write a letter, like maybe they'll publish it in a magazine or they'll just like send a note. But it's like they congratulate each other on like, congratulations, like you passed me. And usually there's like some sort of like graphic that their, I don't know, studio or whatever is made of like, passing the torch like on to the next thing of the characters from each movie. Yeah, it's pretty cool. I thought that was cool, like Hollywood camaraderie kind of thing. But yeah, so we're gonna draft off of this. Yeah,
James Cameron has a whole 10 of his,
Oh, James. Yeah, so we're gonna he's three of the top 4.
Yeah, crazy.
So we're gonna draft. Let's draft. Let's do 7's a good number.
7? I'm okay with 7.
Yeah, 7's a good number. 7 each. So we're gonna draft from this all-time top 100 all-time worldwide box office movies. The Box Office Mojo. Hayden, you're the guest, first time guest. I'm gonna let you pick first because I'm just that nice of a person.
Oh my gosh, thank you for the honor. Okay, let's get into it. For my first pick, I've got to take The Dark Knight. I know that's what you wanted, isn't it? I have never seen a scene from The Dark Knight and not immediately wanted to put that movie on. It is the possibly most rewatchable possibly movie of all time. Yeah. And I'm going to grab it off the board.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. That's, it's hard. I only have, it's funny, I don't have any like 10 out of 10 movies on this list. But so it's kind of, with my first pick, man,
what you gonna do? Swing for the fences.
I guess I'm gonna go Return of the King. Lord of the Rings, Return of the King wraps up the series. So that way, if you draft another Lord of the Rings movie, at least you don't get the epic
I don't
ending.
get the best one. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
The one that won all the rewards.
yeah.
Not everyone thinks it's the best one, but
Yeah. The one, the
they're all
highest,
pretty on it. They're on an even playing field, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But,
Well, Thomas,
so I'll take the last one.
My Lord of the Rings friend I'm pretty sure he's a Fellowship guy all day. So
Yeah, which I understand.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah.
So yeah, Dark Knight, Return of the King. What you going with your second?
For number 2, I've got to go to my boy Steve, and I'm going to take Jurassic Park on that one.
All
Jurassic
right.
Park.
Jurassic Park. Where? Jurassic Park. Where was it in the list? 32. Okay, 32 all time.
Jurassic Park is a movie that I adore.
It's a great movie. It's fun.
That score. All the acting is just so fun. When I was a child, I don't remember sweating as much as I did to a movie than in Jurassic Park. And that kitchen scene, dude. I love that film.
Yeah, great. I actually got to see it in theaters a few years ago.
When it came back,
it was fun.
Yeah.
No, it was one of those things where it's like someone rented out. It was during COVID actually. Someone rented, like a friend, one of our like friends rented out a theater for a bunch of people, and we went and saw Jurassic Park. It was fun. Awesome. Yeah, so I'm gonna go the nostalgia pick and pick one of the best Disney animated classics ever in The Lion King. So
I figured that was where you were going next.
Yeah, Return of the King and Lion King. Got a trend here going here. Yeah, it's just a good movie.
All the kings. Dude, I'm looking at some of the movies on this list. I don't even know what these are. Like, what is Wolf Warrior 2? Is that what it was? I'm not going to take Wolf Warrior 2.
That's good.
I'm actually going to take. I'm going to take. Like we talked about in our episode, one for them, one for me, one for them, one for me.
Yeah.
Go 2 for them, 1 for me, and I'm going to take Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. A moment in cinema, a moment in movie going, a moment in sci-fi.
Revenge of the Sith, huh?
Revenge of the Sith.
It's a good movie. It's definitely the best of the prequels for sure.
Yeah, of the 3. Oh, and it is and unrealistically cringy. And
I'll never forget seeing it in theaters and just like the scene at the end.
Oh yeah,
like.
Oh yeah,
I have that image stuck in my head. Not of like I've seen it since, obviously, but the image in my head is looking at the movie screen. When did that come out? What year did that come out? I believe
it was 2001, sometime around then.
Was it 2001? I'm trying to find it on the list.
2005.
2005. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was in like 8th grade. Or something like that.
Where I was in 2005. I was 7 years old. I remember vividly going to see that movie and then going to Chili's afterwards.
Yeah.
And sitting there with my buddy Jake and just freaking out about how amazing it was.
It was. I was around that age when they re-released the original trilogy in theaters with like the terrible CGI and stuff. Yeah. So Lord of the Rings for me, then Lion King for 3. This is where so here's what I'm not going to do. I drafted my Lord of the Rings movie. I could draft the other 2, but I'm going to kind of let those hang out there. You can have one if you want. Whatever. I'm going to go Inception.
Ooh, that was one I had my eye on.
It's a good movie, man. Leo, like the totem.
Yeah.
I'm a big proponent of like, is it, does the totem fall? Like, does the top fall at the end or not? I'm a big proponent of like, you're not supposed to know. Like,
yeah, I don't think you are.
Like that was the big thing. Like like, oh, is it fall or not? Like, oh, you can kind of see it. I'm like, no. You're not supposed to know. That's the point.
Yeah.
Anyways, yeah.
I just
So,
like the opposite of what people think. If they're like, it falls, I'm like, no, it's up. It's up the whole time. Like, he's not doing it.
Just a contrarian. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
All right. What are you going with? Number 4.
All right, this is a tough one. I didn't think that this list we would start having slim pickings this early, but I'm feeling I'm struggling here, man.
Yeah. What you got?
The box office doesn't say it all. Shoot. You know what? I'm going to take a pick that I don't think you'll like very much.
Okay.
Never mind. I'm going to hold that to the end. I'm going to hold it to the end. And I'm going to test you.
You're going to risk it?
I'm going to risk it for the biscuit. I'm going to go with the Avengers at section 4, spot 4.
The original Avengers.
The OG. First time we saw the whole gang on screen. A moment yet again in superhero history at its peak, or on its way to its peak. You can argue where the peak is.
I remember seeing it. It's number 10 all time box office.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
What you got?
All right, so this will be my most controversial pick. There will be a lot of people that don't like it, and I actually don't know where you stand on this. I'm going The Last Jedi.
The Last Jedi.
I love The Last Jedi. I think it is the 4th best Star Wars movie after the original trilogy.
Wow. I don't know where I stand on The Last Jedi. All of my friends are Star Wars extremists, and they would hate me if I said anything different, so I haven't even explored it yet.
Yeah. Yeah, so, I'll get some flack from some people for that, and I have. I just think it's interesting. I like, I have takes on it. We don't have time for all those though. So you can hit me up, hit me up on Twitter or something.
Tune in for the Last Jedi episode.
Yeah, I don't. Maybe we can do Rian Johnson in the future. We'll see.
Yeah.
All right, where are you going? Number 5.
Dude, you keep throwing me for loops here. Keep getting stuck. All right, I'm going to go with a movie that meant a lot to me as a child, a movie that I thought was the coolest movie ever made, that made me feel like a man and made me feel things I never felt before. And I'm going to go with Independence Day.
Independence Day, okay.
That's right.
That's fun. 94 on the list. Pretty low down there, but
pretty low. I need me an alien movie. Oh, yeah.
All right, cool. That was 5. For number 5 from me, going back to the animated well and picking one of my absolute favorite Pixars in Inside Out.
Nice.
Love Inside Out. Yeah, Inside Out and Soul are my 2 favorite Pixar movies. Not that anyone asked, but
made me feel some things, man.
Right. 85 on the all-time list.
Oh, yeah.
So
it hit me in my soul.
Which, by the way, The Last Jedi, number 17 on the all-time list. So it's up there,
It is. What if I just took like Breaking Dawn Part 2? Just like take it.
Well, it's your pick, so you can if you want. Number 6, where are you going?
I can't do it. Oh man. What if I got the live action Lion King?
Oh, is that on here?
It is. Yeah. Don't look too deep on this list. You'll start getting sad, man. You'll just start getting sad.
It's number 9.
Yeah, it's absurd. Yeah.
It's a trash movie.
It's higher than the original Lion King. Yeah.
It's a trash movie. Don't ever see it.
I know. Let's just avoid that one altogether. Shoot, man. What do I do here? I'm going to take the one that I said I was going to wait till the end, and I'll find something else later. I'm going to take the film that stormed cinemas, that saved the movie theaters in America. The film that will soon be one of the greatest action movies of all time once it stands the test. I'm going to take Top Gun Maverick. All right.
Hey, I get it. So this is something in my friend circle. Like, I get a lot of flack because I had Top Gun Maverick like pretty far down on my
you hated it.
2022 movie list.
But you put him below.
I liked the movie. I liked it. I liked the movie. It was a 7 out of 10. Solid. It got the heart on Letterboxd.
That's all that matters in the end.
Yeah, it got the little heart with the rating. I like Top Gun Maverick. It just wasn't my favorite.
Yeah.
That's,
I loved that film, and it's on my list.
You got it. You
take it away.
You drafted it. We'll see what the people think. All right. So if we're doing box office movies, I guess I've got to try to hit some franchises. I'll take my favorite Marvel movie in Black Panther.
Good pick.
Yeah. I think it's the most interesting Marvel movie.
It's definitely a special one, man. It's got the Hamlet vibes. It's got some of the best costume design I've seen in a movie ever.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
All right, last pick.
Last pick. Oh, my goodness. I don't have any Disney on here. I feel like I need some Disney.
Good, dude.
I've got some Star Wars, but I don't have any Disney. I like some true Disney. So I think I'm going to check my Disney box here, and I'm going to go with the first movie that I saw in theaters with Finding Nemo.
All right. Finding Nemo. It's a great movie.
Oh, yeah.
It really is. It's it's not like Lion King Disney, but it's Pixar, it's still Disney.
Oh, yeah.
All right. So that was 7. Man, this is where I'm kind of struggling. You know what? We're hitting all the genres. I'm gonna go Skyfall.
Skyfall.
Yeah, dude.
James Bond.
Number 28 on the all-time box office list, which I think it's funny. Casino Royale isn't on this list.
It's not even there. No, I was looking for it too. I love that.
And it's the best of the Daniel Craig for sure. But Skyfall's right there with it for me. They're pretty close to tied. I think Skyfall is tied with Casino Royale for the best of the series. But yeah, it's a good Bond movie. I'm not a big Bond fan. The Daniel Craig ones are really the only ones that I really think are really good movies. But Skyfall. So
good pick.
Yeah, so I'll read off my list and then I'll let you read off yours. I've got Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King. I've got The Lion King. I've got, this is going to be out of order because I'm just looking. I've got Inception, Inside Out, Star Wars, The Last Jedi, Black Panther, and Skyfall. That's my 7 box office drafted movies. What's your list look like, Hayden?
Now I've got The Dark Knight, Jurassic Park, Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, The Avengers, Independence Day, Top Gun Maverick, and Finding Nemo.
Yeah. Great. Good list.
Great draft.
Solid.
Good work.
Solid. I like mine better, obviously. I mean, we're going to put this up for listeners to vote on and in a poll on the socials, but I'll let you have the first pick. The Dark Knight might tip it for you.
You gave me The Dark Knight, and it was just...
Yeah.
And then it'll depend on how people feel. Do we have any Star Wars fans up in these listeners? We got some...
and then I set myself up for failure picking The Last Jedi. You're definitely winning this poll.
This is how they're going to vote. They're going to vote on which Star Wars movie is their favorite. And Revenge of the Sith is going to beat The Last Jedi. So...
what can I do?
You're in the minority, man.
Stand here and scream like Darth Vader at the end.
Yes. That was more Wookiee. Forgive me.
All right. So let's wrap up with our last segment. Quick recommendation of the week. What you got for us, Hayden?
Everybody go watch Succession. It's one of the most inventive and creative and well shot and well acted and just a great TV show. It's incredible. Just finished.
I've heard great things.
Yeah.
It's on HBO Max. Yeah.
On HBO Max, an HBO original.
Or Max. Is it Max now? When does it turn Max?
By the time this releases, it may be Max.
Yeah, I think so.
Like at all. It's Max Fisher.
Yeah, Max. When I saw that announcement, I retweeted it with the GIF of Max saying, "Did someone say my name?" That at the end of the beginning of the movie. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Just Max. So it's on Max.
On Max or HBO Max. I don't know.
Yeah.
Figure it out.
Anyways, yeah, I haven't seen it. I don't watch a lot of TV. Every once in a while, I'll break away from the movies and watch a show. So I might have to check it out.
Yeah, it's one of the
Great,
few,
thanks.
and I am a sucker for TV shows that have a definite beginning and ending. And this one definitely does. So
yes,
good stuff.
So my recommendation of the week, I didn't really have anything planned. I'm just kind of winging it. And so I'm going to recommend a book I read, actually like listened to on audiobook several years ago. For one, it came to mind because in my like janky setup, I have to lift my computer up for a better angle on some books, and one of them is a book by Immortals. And so I'm going to recommend A Gentleman in Moscow. It's a book by Immortals. It's kind of a historical fiction book about the kind of Russia kind of after the Bolshevik Revolution, about this guy who, instead of getting killed by the Bolsheviks, they basically put him on house arrest in this hotel. So he's kind of he lives in this hotel, and it's hard to describe what it's about. It has the historical fiction in there, but it's about him and his relationship with some of the people in this hotel, this young girl that he meets. Just a very endearing book. And so I listened to it on audiobook. So if you can get hold of that, it's a good listen, but also a good read in general. And I think would make a really good movie. We'll have to talk about adaptations at some point.
Yeah.
But I think it would be a great one to adapt into a movie.
Yeah.
I have to put some thought into who would make it well. But yeah. So that's my recommendation of the week. I wish I had it here to hold up, but I don't.
Yeah.
I do have the book. I just don't have it here with me. So yeah, that's my recommendation.
Awesome.
Haydn, where can people find you?
You can find me on Instagram or Twitter at Haydn Fabre. Straight up.
You probably need to spell fob for the non-Lafayette people.
Lord. If you're not from Louisiana specifically.
And your first name. Your first name isn't spelled.
Listen, man. My parents, they weren't looking out for my future. So my name is Haydn, and that's spelled Haydn, no E, because they couldn't afford to buy a vowel. And then my last name, the French name that I don't even know how they even pronounced it this way, is Fabre, but it is Fabre. So follow me at HAYDN FABRE, and let's chat or whatever.
Yeah. Instagram, Twitter, Haydn Fabre.
Yeah.
At Haydn Fabre. Figure out the spelling on your own, I guess.
Good luck. It's probably going to be in the description of the podcast, so just go there.
It will. It'll be there.
So, great.
All right. Well, we're going to head out. It was a good time, fun discussion on Rushmore. And we'll see how the movie draft ends up, but I don't have high hopes for what the people will think of mine. So anyways, great talking with you, Haydn. We'll see you back again for Mr. Fox. Fantastic. Right, Mr. Fox, that is.
It's a fantastic time.
All right. See you next time. Thank you so much for joining us on The Establishing Shot today. We hope you enjoyed the episode and got a lot out of it. Make sure before you go to like and subscribe on all your podcast platforms, and especially on Spotify and Apple. If you could leave a rating and review, that would greatly help the visibility of the podcast, and I would greatly appreciate it. Again, if you go to establishingshotpod.com, you can find out all you need to know about the show, where to find us on the social media platforms, where to find us podcast-wise, YouTube, and you can even leave a voicemail there on the website on the right side of your screen. So click that if you want to give a comment or ask a question about the show. Just feel free to leave a voicemail. We'd be happy to feature that on the show. And also, if you just want to email rather than leave a voicemail, you can email us at establishingshotpod@gmail.com. and we would be happy to answer your question there or feature a question or comment on the show if it pertains to the episodes. So please do that. And we would love for you to join the Establishing Shot family. You can, again, find where to do that on the donate page at establishingshotpod.com. We hope you have a great week, and we look forward to seeing you again next time.
We were happy here. For a little while.
But look, I figure it this way. Better to be king for a night than schmuck for a lifetime.